Thank you for coming out tonight. And before we get started, one of the things that I think we should all do before we even have the candidates come up is let's give them all a round of applause just for throwing their hats in the ring. Thank you for being willing to serve. And so one of the things tonight, each of the candidates is going to be given 3 minutes to speak. They will have 2 questions that they are going to be answering. What is something good that they have done in their area of the community? And what is one thing that they would improve or change if they're elected or re-elected? And like I said, they'll have 3 minutes, but if they mention their opponent, then their opponent gets 1 minute to rebut. So the idea about this is we want to talk about the candidate's qualifications, not trying to run down their opponent. But the other thing is we should have people set up in the order that you see them on your ballot and in your voter's guide. So that's what we've tried to do. That's why I was up here playing musical chairs with them for a few minutes. But without further ado, the first person up is Wade Carpenter.
Let me get my glasses over here. All right. Hey, and thank you. Welcome and thank you for having me tonight. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Wade Carpenter, and I am the PUD Commissioner for District Number 1. I'm a lifelong resident of Stevens County. I presently live at Deer Lake with my wife, Jill, and we've been water and sewer customers for the past 25 years with, of course, Stevens PUD. I grew up right here in Chewelah. Go Cougs. Graduated from Jenkins High School, attended Spokane Falls Community College and Gonzaga University on baseball scholarships. Graduated from Gonzaga with a BA in sociology. Right after graduation, I went and played 3 years of professional baseball. I had an opportunity to play with the Seattle Rainiers and 2 years with the San Francisco Giant organization. After baseball, I returned back to Gonzaga as a graduate assistant coach and earned my K-12 teaching degree. Right after Gonzaga University, I went to work for 27 years with Northwest Alloys and had many jobs throughout that plant. Started off writing training manuals and then became a furnace control operator. Became a process engineering technician, a plant shift superintendent, and ended my career in security, became an EMT on the emergency response team. After my career there, I became a substitute teacher in Chewelah and an elementary school in Loon Lake. I've been a volunteer coach for about the last 35 plus years, doing various sports. And the last 20 plus years here at Chewelah High School baseball and American Legion baseball. Some important information about the PUD I'd like you to know. Stevens PUD is located in Loon Lake. I am one of 3 commissioners on the board. We have a general manager and 15 permanent employees. We own and operate 18 water systems, 12 in Stevens County and 6 in Spokane County, northern Spokane County. Also 7 sewer systems. We service 5,100 water customers and 1,500 sewer customers. We also operate and own a septic facility in Valley, Washington, where we receive approximately 2.5 million gallons of septic a year from pumpers throughout the county. Stevens PUD is a well-run organization, and I'm proud to be part of it. I'm running for re-election to maintain our quality water and sewer service for all of our customers at a reasonable rate. Thank you.
Thank you. right, and one of the other things that I failed to mention, so Jared is the timekeeper, and so he'll be letting you know when you have 1 minute left. Next up is Brittany Ingalls, who's also running for the PUD Commissioner.
Hi everyone, I'm Brittany Ingalls. I'd like to thank you all for coming out tonight. It's great to meet all of you. I have been happily married with my husband and we have 2 fantastic children. We coached a soccer team until this year when my son actually got on the Seattle Sounders junior team here in Spokane area. So I worked as a paralegal for 10 years. I did criminal, personal injury, L&I, and civil court stuff. I also now work as a realtor and we own our own construction company here locally. I've worked with legislative issues, strategic plans on nonprofits, budgeting for projects, and coordinating with engineers. I'm running for the PUD Commissioner position because I want to serve my community. I want to make sure that we can move responsibly into that future. I want my children to be able to stay in this community and have the same lifestyle in their future as we are enjoying today. In order to do that, we have to manage our public utility district responsibly. I've seen issues with transparency, finding contact information for your commissioner, having plans or the budget readily accessible for all of you who are their customers, because we are all voters. The new budget building plans were not published on their website or in our papers for voters or customers to be informed or involved in that discussion. The budget is also not on the website or readily accessible for the voters and consumers, leaving how that project is being funded to be currently unknown. Budget plans and future growth of the PUD should be disclosed to everybody. During the 2020 to 2021 legislative session, 2 broadband bills were passed that allowed the PUDs to help their communities with broadband service in their rural areas. These also included grants to fund those projects. Our current PUD fails to engage in implementing broadband services and has no future plans to do so. I am the only candidate to receive the endorsements for the Stevens County Republican Central Committee, Washington Realtors, as well as former and current elected officials, including Senator Sally Short. As your Public Utility District Commissioner, I will work consistently to improve all of these needed areas and services. I am committed to bringing you transparency, an effective operating budget, adequate fire flow, and bringing broadband to our rural areas. I will keep informed on issues that impact our community and stay engaged with our local officials. I thank you so much for your vote in November.
All right, next up is our County District Court Judge, Gina Twite.
All right, good evening. I appreciate the opportunity this evening to describe some of the positive changes that have happened in District Court in the past few years. And so I'd like to start with talking about the jail alternative program that has been implemented in District Court. In appropriate cases, I can order that people serve the sentences that I have given in a jail alternative. And we have a contract with the Moon Security Company now to order people to serve their jail sentence in appropriate cases on EHM, which most people are familiar with. It stands for electronic home monitoring. So it's essentially house arrest. Another very exciting program we have is for the SCRAM alternative to jail. SCRAM is an acronym that stands for Secure, Continuous, Remote Alcohol Monitoring. So it is, both of these programs are bracelets that are worn by the person serving the jail sentence. So with EHM, there is a GPS capability, so they can be given parameters to go to work, doctor appointments, that sort of thing, but otherwise must stay at home. And even though it sounds like, well, gee, I'd love to serve my sentence at home, I think it really is actually a pretty negative experience when you realize you are absolutely confined to the house other than going to work, and you cannot go anywhere. And the SCRAM alternative, of course, monitors alcohol consumption on a 24/7 basis. And that's extremely important in a lot of cases where individuals have an alcohol addiction, and that is a contributing factor to the criminal history of the criminal offense that they're serving a sentence for. And also, this does maintain public safety, but it also maintains an excellent cost savings to the county. The cost of the jail alternative for either the KHM or the SCRAM device is approximately $10 a day. The cost to the public when a person is housed in the Stevens County Jail is $77 a day. And so just, I ran some numbers. Since August of 2021, so just a little over a year, District Court has sentenced 7,700 people to serve. That's the number of days that have been served on the alternative program. And so that cost, as compared to, I had a note on the cost, but compare that to what would be $77 a day. That figures into an over a $500,000 savings in that amount of time to Stevens County. So it is a significant savings, and I feel when I put people on this jail alternative that it's in the appropriate case and public safety can be maintained along with obviously the cost savings. And so I'm very excited that we have this program, and I'm sure many people have also heard about the overcrowding in the jail. So does that my stop time? Okay.
Yes, it is.
All right, well, I wish I could explain it more. If anyone wants more information about what District Court is doing in this regard, I'd be happy to answer any questions when we're through here tonight. Thank you.
Next up is our county clerk, Michelle Enright.
It's nice to see all of you tonight, and I'm happy to be here. I have been with Stevens County I was thinking about this the other day. I've been thinking it's been 29 years, but in February it will have been 30 years. I started out as an on-call 911 dispatcher, went into full-time. I have worked in some different departments. I've also done vehicle licensing. I was a legal assistant in the prosecutor's office for a little while. Most of my career has been in the clerk's office, that's where my passion is. Another thing, I served as clerk of the board for the commissioners prior to being appointed as county clerk. And that really helped round out my government education on budget and everything else. So June 14 of last year I was appointed, and so I'm running to retain my seat. Some things I've done for the clerk's office, and I would say the county, is I instituted a debit card payment program for jurors. So instead of having to wait 4 to 6 weeks to get your check, maybe it's more like 3 to 4, to get your check from the county through our voucher process, you can get it in about a week. On your debit card will be loaded. And that saves the county, $6.50. It's 55 cents for a load fee for the card rather than the $7 and something it is to do the check. It also saves time for the auditor. They don't have to deal with this cheatment like they do for checks that aren't cashed after 2 years and report the money to the state and everything. So that's on the third-party company that does it. Another thing we are instituting is an e-response program for summonses. And so you can go online soon. We're working out the final bugs. But soon you can go online and fill out your jury summons. And if you provide your email or your phone number, we can send you live notifications that, oh, this jury has been canceled, this jury trial has been canceled, and you don't have to report, or we'll send you a letter with a new report date. So we're trying to help that because I know how hard it is on people's schedules. So we're trying to help make it the best we can. In the future, what I'd like to do is, and I'm working on this, I'm already trying to lay the groundwork and research on it, is get e-filing. So right now, as it is, you have to come in person or mail your court documents for your cases. And with e-file, you can do it online from home. It'll save people money for if they have an out-of-town attorney. They're not having to pay that attorney's mileage to come up. So those are the things in the works right now. I've been so happy to serve and excited to continue to serve. And I thank you for your time.
All right, next up is our county treasurer, Leslie Valls.
Hi there, my name is Leslie Valls and I am your Stevens County Treasurer, and I've been your treasurer now for about 6 years. I was first appointed and then I went through an election. Actually, this is my third election at this point, so I would still humbly ask for your vote. Let me tell you a little bit about the treasurer's office and how it works within the county. So we are the bank of the county. If you think about it, we're set up very similarly to your private bank, except for we receive for all of the taxing districts in the county. And you would not believe how many different taxing districts there are in the county. We have 15 school districts, we have 13 fire districts, we have cities, we have Loon Lake sewer districts. We actually have 2 of those, believe it or not. We have 3 different milfoil districts, which is districts just purely set up to deal with the weeds in the lakes. We have districts set up for sheriff's office and all the different departments that exist within Stevens County. So we do that. We also collect about $48 million property taxes every year. And we collect that on about 45,000 different parcels throughout the county. So anytime there is a change to any of those parcels, a transaction takes place in the treasurer's office, which is called a real estate excise tax transaction. How exciting, right? But essentially it just lets the county know that a transaction has taken place. We send that down to recording, you have a legal document there, we send it over to the assessor's office, they're aware of the changes that have taken place. So we do quite a few of those transactions every year as well. We had obviously record years the last 2 years as everybody was trying to sell everything they could possibly imagine, and in some cases I think they were trying to sell grandma's property before grandma was ready to sell the property. So we had a couple of those different transactions, but we do a lot of those different transactions, and then we work closely with the auditor's office to ensure we have compliance with the state auditors, we work with the budgets, and obviously we deal with all the cash, checks, and everything like that that comes into the county. So as far as change that I feel like I've brought to the county, I think in my office, and obviously it's probably affected a few other offices, I've definitely had a cultural shift within my office. And let me explain that for just a minute. When I walked into my office and took over in that office, there was one person available to help the taxpayer that came in. And during tax season in April or October, you get lines out the hall and things like that, and I just thought this is just not necessary in any way. So I took it from one person assisting to 4 different people assisting in the office. We now do things like Michelle was talking about where you can electronically file these real estate transactions. If you're in Clayton, you don't need to be driving to Caldwell to drop these things off. We have options there. I have a new credit card company. We've got a great new website. We take payments online. We do absolutely anything that we can to make sure the most uncomfortable part, which is paying property taxes, is as easy as possible and doing some of these property transactions. So that is definitely a couple of different things that I feel like within that cultural shift my office has done. And then as far as the second question was, what is the struggle in the courthouse? And I think a struggle that we have in the courthouse is that we tend to approach as a group in a way that is, somebody asks a question, the taxpayer asks a question, or there is a request, and the response is, well, this is what we've always done. And I think, I know I'm done. So I think that changing our mindset in what we've always done and trying to do something completely different, especially taking the taxpayer's input or taking the requester's input in, is going to make a huge difference over the next several years as we try and write out this economy. Thank you very much.
All right, next up we have the candidates for county assessor, and we'll start with Dude Simmons.
Good evening. My name is Dude Simmons, and I'm running for the Stevens County Assessor. I'm a 4th-generation farmer up in the Kettle River Valley, where my family has raised livestock and grain and hay for the last, I took over the farm about 25 years ago. So I'll get right to it. Some of the things that I see that I've done positive change for the community For the last 39 years, excuse me, I've been a 4-H leader. I'm on my 3rd generation of 4-Hers now that I'm working with. This is the future in our farmers and the future in our loggers. So being able to grow up with those kids has been able to assist them as far as the working knowledge for the different generations in farming, in timber. And these are the 2 industries that Stevens County was always known for. I've researched one of my biggest projects I did to help the farmers. I researched a program where I was able to convert the land that's being assessed as farmland raising alfalfa to raising wheat. By changing the difference in the crops that are grown, I was able to lower the tax value being assessed on the wheat lands down in the southern part of the county for all of our wheat farmers. Then another initiative that I took to help with is with the Designated Forest Lands program. A lot of folks know me, it's one of my passions. I'm a forester, I have all that experience. I want to make sure that people understand when you go into these special use programs, you're getting a tax reduction, but the taxes don't go away because the government's going to get their taxes. They just get shifted to all of your neighbors until you harvest that timber. So that's why putting together a new timber management plan system for Stevens County has increased the knowledge for all the timberland owners as they've been moving in. We've got a lot of folks moving in, don't have a clue about timberland. They just wanted a tax reduction. That's not what the program's for. So I use my knowledge of the laws to assist the landowners whose lands have been destroyed by natural disasters, because there's a clause. There was always one in RCW 8334 that was for the current use, but never one for designated forest land. I was able to cross those since we combined our programs, and now the state has the exception in RCW 33 that if land's destroyed by natural disaster, I can remove it from the forest land program with no compensation taxes due. Something I see is the downturn of the economy coming and the rising of the tax burden. That's going to be our greatest challenges. I see larger increases of the older retired citizens, so we have less industry, we have less economy. So that with that lowering of the economy, everybody else's taxes are going to go up. So something that our office is going to work with is to assist landowners that are facing tax foreclosures. We've done this ever since I've been there. As soon as Miss Leslie puts out the list, we've got a deputy that goes through the list and sends out the information to all of those landowners that might lose their land, that here's an opportunity for you to get help with those taxes that are due. So my job as the next assessor will continue to work with all the local departments, work with the state, work with the federal government, which I do because they have programs to help all of our farmers and all of our timber owners. Thank you very much.
All right, the next candidate is Rick Johnson.
Well, thank you for having me come tonight to share. My name is Rick Johnson. I'm a Christian, I'm a husband, father of 7, grandfather of 9, and a citizen here of Stevens County, a landowner, a taxpayer, and I'm very passionate about private property rights, which is a God-given, unalienable right. After much prayer and counsel, I chose to run for the Stevens County Assessor so that I could be able to try and hold back the staggering increase in our property taxes. We the people must go back and rediscover our nation's founding. The United States Constitution is perhaps the most important document ever written for the benefit of mankind, other than the Bible. George Washington wrote that the United States Constitution and system of government is, quote, in my opinion, the fairest prospect of happiness and prosperity that ever was presented to man, end quote. Article 1, Section 3 of our Washington State Constitution reads, quote, no person shall be deprived of life, liberty, or property. I believe elected officials should serve and protect the citizens they represent, not the state. When my family and I moved to Stevens County in 1995, it was like going back in time 30 years, and I mean that in a good way. There was a sense of freedom that was tangibly seen and felt in this county. Eastern Washington has made a valiant effort to hold the line, but we are being overwhelmed. Our lifestyle, culture, and liberties have been compromised and encroached upon slowly but surely. We are like the frog in the pot of boiling water. The Stevens County Republican Platform states, Section 2.3, quote, "State education funding should not be garnered from property taxes, but by revenue generated from state lands and assets, such as natural resource income." The reason our platform states this is because our Washington State Constitution states the exact same thing in Article 9, Section 3 of the Washington Constitution. If we follow our own Constitution, then private property owners would save 56% on their property taxes because education accounts for 56% of the budget. I've been an active citizen of Stevens County for many years. I fought against the Growth Management Act from its inception because it strips property owners from their private property rights and allows the state to control the use of their property. I have management, leadership, and administrative skills. I have owned a broker-dealer securities firm, a real estate brokerage firm, and I have taught college-level appraisal courses. As your Stevens County assessor, I would bring sound business management, customer service, courtesy, fair assessments, and interdepartmental cooperation. I want to simplify the paperwork for our citizens that own property and make it easy for them to make changes to their property as they see fit. I want to work with the treasurer to do our best to eliminate tax lien foreclosures. I will work hard to protect your property rights, and I will seek the Lord's guidance through prayer when making decisions as your assessor. I would appreciate your vote coming up in a couple of weeks. Thank you very much.
Next up, we have the candidates for County Commissioner, position number 2, and we'll start with Mark Burrows.
Hey, my name is Mark Burrows, and I've been your county commissioner for nearly 2 years. I grew up locally in a God-fearing farming and ranching family, and while I was in high school, my family moved to Eastern Oregon, where I met my future wife, LaVon. We've been married for 39 years, and we had 3 sons, and we have 7 grandchildren. I'm a United States Air Force veteran, and I was awarded the U.S. Air Force Commendation Medal for meritorious service. After my enlistment, I returned home, and I ran a chainsaw for Hanson Logging for about a fun year. In 1991, I was selected to be a police officer for the city of Chewelah, and I served here for 30 years. I was sergeant for 15 of those years, and then chief of police for 5.5 years before I retired, again, nearly 2 years ago. As chief of police, I kept the department fully staffed, and I always had a balanced budget. We also started a canine team that made your community safer by apprehending fugitives and seizing narcotics all over northeastern Washington. During my police career, I worked well with community and through numerous administrations and all local, state, and federal agencies. For 3 decades, I came to work wearing body armor and a gun belt to protect the people and the property of Chewelah and Stevens County. I've helped many thousands of people resolve a wide range of problems over 30 years, and I've come to know what is important to you in our local culture. When duty called, I responded. In 30 years, thousands of times. I've been here in your challenging times and in your joyful times. I've just always been here for you. It's been said that police work is a young man's game. That's especially true in a small town like Chewelah, where the chief of police is also the animal control officer, the traffic cop, a major crime detective, a politician, and a labor negotiator. Not saying I'm old, but I did plan on retiring in July of 2021, but I really didn't want to stop serving the people of Stevens County. So in 2020, I applied for the vacant commissioner's position in Stevens County, and I was the top choice of the Stevens County Republican Central Committee to fill this position. Once appointed, I immediately went to work for you. In the last 2 years, I've built great working relationships with county department heads, elected officials, county employees at all levels, and commissioners across the state of Washington. For the last 2 years, I've gladly helped every citizen that's reached out to me. I've engaged with numerous citizens groups, thank you, Jared, and I serve on over 20 boards and committees. In the Commissioner's office, we're currently working on many things. We're working to improve public safety, broadband services, public health, and veteran services. We're also working with legislators and other commissioners in Eastern Washington to restore a balance to the predator problems that impact our area. Ladies and gentlemen, I bring a lifetime of personal and professional fiscal responsibility to the Office of County Commissioner. I have 35 years of dedicated uniformed service to my country and my community. I bring 24 years of supervisory and executive leadership experience to the Office of County Commissioner, and as your Stevens County Commissioner for nearly 2 years, I've earned enough experience and public trust to win the primary election this year with nearly 72% of the votes. And tonight, I'm asking for your vote. Again, my name is Mark Burrows, and I'm thanking you for your vote.
Next up is Carl Taylor.
Good evening, my name is Carl Taylor. I'm running for Stevens County Commissioner. Thanks for having me. Can y'all hear me out there with this? All right. So some of the questions that are given, an example of what has contributed to positive change in the community. Well, for the last 20 plus years, I've been doing business in Stevens County, Washington. We've been bringing in multiple groups to train special operation forces. That brings about $200,000 a year into the community and the tax base that's spent here above and beyond what I charge the guys that come in and train and teach them how to do things in the special operations community. What struggles do I see in the courthouse and how can you help? Well, what struggles I see in the courthouse and what's really kind of got me going on all this thing is the lack of servant leadership. It's my opinion that the lack of servant leadership is not being served well in this county. I've spent 35 years of my life leading men into combat. I'm a United States Marine Corps Scout Sniper. I spent 12 years in the Marines, Reserve and active duty, and I know servant leadership. I've led men into combat several times. I've contracted for the government overseas in austere, non-permissive environments. So like Mr. Burrows, I wore a gun my entire adult life. I've been fighting terrorism since 1986 when we first bombed Libya. I've been deploying everywhere around the world since then to places that you've never heard of, all over the Middle East. I've taken my experience and brought it back here. I've been a volunteer wrestling coach. I've trained the police, some of the guys here in Chewelah came up to the course I did for the county and all the local law enforcement units for active shooter to protect our students. Help them take my experiences of doing close quarter combat and show them how to move through buildings and structures competently to protect our most precious resource, our children. So I'm asking for your vote with the servant leadership issues, the government the current county government not allowing us to have any open government, meaning the cancellation of WebEx, and they brought it back on a limited basis, and I feel they've had positive change with that too. Since I've been in this race, I see a lot of the decisions they've made and things I've brought up have been getting handled. Other thing that we've brought up is the lack of meeting minutes. The state law requires the county to keep meeting minutes, and to me, that's very important. I've lost men on my left and my right. I've been in too many places to discredit their honor, to let our county government not do the things they should be doing. Once again, my name is Carl Taylor. I'm running for Stevens County Commissioner. I'd like your vote on November 8th. I've lived here with my wife and family for the last 20 years, and then I look at Stevens County as the last bastion of freedom in Washington State. And if we don't do something about it, we're going to continue to get steamrolled by those over across the mountain in Olympia. Thank you for your time.
All right, next up we have the candidates for county coroner, and we'll start with Lori Sampson.
Hi, my name is Lori Sampson. I'm your current Stevens County coroner. I've been your coroner for the last 8 years. I'm running again this year because I'm in the middle of a lot of projects that I hope to continue. One is to accreditate the office through the International Association of Coroners and Medical Examiners. I hope to complete that in July or August of this coming year. This year, in January, coming into January, will mark my 24th year as a forensic death investigator. I started out working for the Spokane County Medical Examiner's Office in 1999, and I have continued working in this line of work ever since. I obtained my board certification through the American Board of Medical Legal Death Investigators in 2001, and I've maintained that certification since. I'm also a registered nurse. I've worked in the medical field for a total of 33 years. It's very important in the position of coroner that you have a strong medical background and a medical education. We are death investigators and we do gather information, but the most important thing is we're bringing back that medically there's a clinical reason as to why you are deceased. I sign many death certificates every year, on average between 120 and 130 annually. Last year I signed 119. We did do 39 autopsies this last year, which goes to show you that the death certificates that I'm signing, the majority are based on the medical records and the medical information that I gleaned from looking at those medical records, and that's where that medical knowledge comes into play. I'm asking for your vote again this year, and I would like to continue serving as your coroner. As far as the questions, give us an example of how you contributed positive change to the community and how did you identify the need. During the pandemic, I worked with Dr. Sam Artzes, who is the public health director, and we developed a plan as how we were going to go forward because nobody really knew how many people were going to be dying and who was going to sign the death certificate and how is that going to be determined. We determined that I would be signing the COVID deaths to keep his load lighter because he has a full caseload on top of his job working as an ER doctor. He also has a full caseload working for the health department. So that's one of the contributions that I made. Also during the pandemic, I began working for Providence Mount Carmel Hospital in the emergency room. I worked for them 2 days a week. I agreed that I would start working for them during the pandemic, and I've continued to work since. We've had an uptick in COVID deaths COVID cases, not COVID deaths, this last week actually here in Stevens County. As far as the struggles that I see within the county and within the courthouse, one of the biggest struggles that I see in the community is the fentanyl deaths that we're seeing. We're one of the last counties to finally start seeing these deaths. We've had several. I stay with open communications with the detectives and let them know the minute that the toxicology report comes back and it's confirmed that it's an illicit fentanyl death. I can tell that by looking at the toxicology report that it has a certain additive to it that indicates that it's illicit. These fentanyl pills are really affecting our community. The 30 milligram oxy tabs look exactly like the Mexi tabs. You can't tell the difference side by side. By working with the detectives closely, I can let them know if it's a controlled substance homicide right away so that they can follow up on their end, and that's my contribution within the courthouse. Thank you for having us tonight.
All right, the next candidate is Ramona Calden.
Hi everybody, I'm Ramona Colvin and I'm running for Stevens County Coroner. A little bit about myself is I've lived in Stevens County for 36 years. I've been married for 20 years and we have 4 amazing children. One of them went home to our Heavenly Father in 2016, so it kind of gives me an extra drive to really want to ensure the families get the answers that they deserve. So the questions is what did we, I actually don't have them, I didn't get them until I got here, but what benefits have we provided? So when I started with the coroner's office in 2017, basically there was no assets. We had no uniforms, we had to buy all of our own supplies down to the paper bags that we did firearm deaths in. We were allotted a camera only. We were not able to speak with dispatch or our police deputies. We never knew what type of scene we were going to be walking into. Within the first year and a half at the coroner's office, I reestablished all lines of communication, back up with our dispatch, back up with the sheriff's office, and we were able to get information about what type of scenes, so we didn't have to keep our personal cars piled full of any and every type of death investigation tools. We now have handbags for the firearm deaths to do proper evidence. We now have uniforms, and I was also able to help secure 2 coroner vehicles, which entailed meeting with the commissioners, meeting with the sheriff, meeting with state patrol to make sure that we were up on all DOT regulations. My plans for the coroner's office. I would like to get the chaplain program back up and running because it's a huge advantage for our families. I want to do cross-training with our law enforcement so we can interact and better serve each other and cut down on wait times on scenes. I want to do monthly meetings with all of our deputy coroners to make sure that they're up to speed and properly trained, as it's an ever-advancing field and things are constantly changing. I plan on making sure we are in compliance with all regulations for proper death investigations, including all inventory lists and property lists. I want to go back to using our local resources. It'll cut down on wait time on scenes for our law enforcement, as well as it'll cut down on wait time for grieving families with their loved one laying there. I also want to bring in a staff member from the Spokane Medical Examiner's Office to make sure that we are following all guidelines and we are up to the speed of how they want us to handle our autopsies. I am the only coroner candidate that was endorsed by the Republican Central Committee, the Spokane Tribe of Indians, as well as Tribal Council, several elected officials, including Sheriff Brad Mankey, and our previous coroner, Patty Hancock. I'm Ramona Colvin. I humbly ask for your vote, and I thank you for your time.
All right, next we'll hear from the candidates for the county prosecuting attorney, and we'll start with Erica George.
Hello, I'm Erica George. I'm running for prosecutor. I was raised here in Stevens County, K through 12 there in Kettle Falls, so I'm very familiar with our community here. Obviously, I went away to school. I got my undergrad degree from University of Washington. Then I went to law school at University of Idaho, got my JD, and then I continued on. I actually have an advanced legal degree, a master's of law and trial advocacy. In law, we have to do everything backwards, so rather than what you think of getting a master's usually comes before your PhD or doctorate in law, it's backwards. So my degree is advanced. And it's all about becoming an effective trial attorney, talking about using the rules of evidence and every other thing that you do, applying the law ethically, and being just a great trial attorney. And I'm sure that in a lot of ways you think maybe you get that as you complete trials, which you do. But I'm going to tell you I use that degree probably more often than I use just my regular JD. Just an example, I had a defense attorney a few years back, 20 plus years out of Spokane, look me in the eye and tell me I wasn't going to get a piece of evidence in trial. That piece of evidence was a UA taken, a urine sample taken from a 3-year-old girl. It returned positive at Mount Carmel Hospital for methamphetamine. I got that UA sample in and I convicted that defendant of assault of a child for exposing that child to meth. So that's just an example of how the types of cases that I'm going to fight for here in Stevens County. I have 11 years as an attorney. The first part of my career was private. I worked criminal defense, I worked civil. I actually worked for a private criminal defense attorney. I've done family law and civil issues. I started as a prosecutor in Klickitat County. I did a year there, and essentially that was an office of 4. So everything that you can imagine in a prosecutor's office, I've done. I did appeals, I did district court, superior court, I was a juvenile prosecutor, I did child support enforcement, I did LFO enforcement, I worked on land use issues, specifically dealing with the Yakima Nation tribe and land use. So everything that happened there as an attorney, I did it in that office. Then I moved on to Ellensburg, where I was just a felony deputy in appeals there, and then finally got to come home here to Stevens County, where I've been for 5.5 years. Here in Stevens County, I've mostly done felony work, but again, I've worked at juvenile when we didn't have a juvenile prosecutor for a while. I've done appeals. I've worked the child enforcement dockets. I've worked the mental health dockets. And what have I brought to this community? As a prosecutor, I have done over 50 jury trials. I've gained a reputation of being tough on crime. In 2021, I did 18 of the 25 Superior Court trials, including 3 sex offenses that I've done. I've done violent homicide, vehicular homicides. I've done Class A felonies, everything on down. In terms of what do I see in terms of problems within the courthouse, I think it's Mr. Rasmussen has pretty much shattered relationships with other departments. I have quietly been working to rebuild those relationships, so I have strengthened relationships with law enforcement and all of the other departments. So thank you so much.
And next we have Larry Christensen, who's here on his son Jeff's behalf.
And the reason for that is his wife is expecting. The child is going to have to be introduced, they thought, on Monday, but it looks like it might happen sooner, this thing's occurring. And so they're at the hospital, and he called me this afternoon and said, would I mind coming on down? Of course not. But I don't have a pre-prepared statement. I've talked to him at length, of course, during this campaign. My opinion is that there's a little difference in the experience between the two candidates. Each has been a deputy prosecutor for many years. In Jeff's case, it's 10 or maybe now 11. He's done his time entirely in Spokane County, where they kind of start you in district court, you know, traffic tickets and that sort of thing. And then you go up as you get more experience and maybe get a little better handle on what you have to do. And now he is assigned to major crimes, which means, you know, the heavy-duty stuff. But that only happened in the last couple, 3 years, and earlier he was doing the potpourri. And so his experience is similar, whether it's in one of the smaller counties or whether it's in a large one. Eventually, you cover the same ground if you've spent about the same amount of time, and they have. So the difference, if any there be, and I think Jeff's highlighted this in his literature and in his campaign, is 10 more years that he spent in the service. And it was mentioned by Carl and Mark, and what they said is true. Jeff was a Marine Corps pilot. It takes a couple of years to get to be a pilot, and then they assign you, and as it happened, Iraq came to pass soon after he got to that level. And so he was dispatched there, spent 3 years there. I don't know exactly what he did. I was flying, but 1 year he was a forward air traffic controller, and I don't even know what that meant. But he spent his time there, and he was involved in the evacuation that you all probably remember of the Indonesian people that were involved in the tsunami. They happened to be en route on his ship to that to Iraq. Went right by there almost to the day when that happened. So they spent 30 days, day and night, moving people, moving supplies, saving lives. And, you know, you don't know it until you do it. And that happened to be part of his experience. You know, that I think is a difference. It all has to do with leadership. Sounds like the candidates agree on one thing, and that is you need new leadership up there. You're going to have it, whether it's Eric or whether it's Jeff. It's a good thing because it needs it. Thank you.
All right, next up is candidate for the District 7, Position 1. And we have Lonnie Ray Williams here with us tonight.
First off, thanks for showing up. That's the most important thing that we can do is show up. Thank you for running. When I served years ago in the military, I found myself in the Presidential Honor Guard in the infantry. And I found myself one night on the Lincoln Memorial looking out on the reflection pool. And during that time, I saw the wall and a bunch of other things, and I recognized the great cost that had come in making this nation. I didn't know it at the time, but that wasn't just my service there, wasn't the end for me. I saw a time coming when things were getting bad, and my family and I, we started this publication a couple years ago called The Pamphlet, in response to people trying to twist and reimagine our history. And that publication concentrates on our founding fathers, our founding principles, a representative government where we hire public servants to go forth and represent us and deliver what we want, not what they want. And I saw as that was falling apart across the nation, and we were trying to write about it to educate people about just people like Sybil Ludington, a 16-year-old girl who rode twice as far as Paul Revere, We don't want to minimize Paul, but we want 16-year-old girls to be inspired to get involved with their history, because this next generation is either going to save our country or ruin it. And we need to do our part, and thank you for doing your part, for getting involved, because this is exactly what it takes. This is a relationship between public servants and you, the voters, and you need to come here, and we need to come here so that we can answer to you and you can answer to us, and that's why I'm running. Because we need that representative government to promote ideas like parents are the primary stakeholders of their children's lives. What's more common sense than parents being able to raise their children in their own way without government interference? Education dollars that follow students, not failing institutions. We want to fund our students' education, not failing buildings that indoctrinate our children. And we are an agricultural district across these 7 counties. This is the largest in the state and the 11th largest geographically in the country, and this requires representation, and that requires someone who's willing to stand up and show up. I'm here. I will be wherever you need me, on one side of the district to the other, in the middle of the night. Every one of my campaign things has a 1-800 service that rings right to my cell phone. That's the type of representation you should have. Out of every one of whoever you're going to decide for, whether it be me or somebody else, please do your homework. Pick up the phone and dial them right now. If they're not willing to have that conversation and talk to you right now about the issues, what's the odds of that happening after the election? Get involved like you are. Thank you for showing up. God bless you, each and every one of you. This is exciting. This is what we need to see. Please tell your neighbors. Register to vote. Show up and vote. Show up at forums. Get to know your candidates. Let's get everybody excited again, because we're Americans. For years they've been telling us to sit down, shut up, and stay home. It's time for us to get out amongst each other, hug each other, and do what's right for this country. And with this type of leadership, this is what you're going to get. I'd appreciate your vote.
All right, once again, we'd like to thank all of you for showing up and thank all the candidates for coming out. The candidates will stick around for a while, so if you have questions, you can go and ask the candidates individually. And so thank you again for everyone.